couldn't find it.
How are you?
We're doing that soon.
I'll find one email for you.
Okay.
Dan?
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Will you be around later?
Okay. We'll try the picnic in, Project Touring in September, see if we can get if there's people around for that.
Picnic?
Well, cookout. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I like my spot over there. That corner.
Kind of looks that way, doesn't it?
No need for that.
How you doing, Dan?
Excellent, Brad, how about you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Yes, there is a meeting.
This is it.
Oh, that is the official time, too.
This
To
is-
fix the
look
clock.
at that.
Every clock, even our computers are wrong, which I didn't think was possible. I'm not sure. I don't know how it does that.
Yeah, computer is wrong.
You know, it occurred to me the other day that teenagers have no idea that there was ever a time you had to set clocks.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
And pretty soon they won't know that you have to do an hour back and forth.
And they don't even know how to read. A clock. I mean,
Analog.
that's not digital, yeah. It really is becoming a part.
That's
The problem for me, because I need my glasses to see it.
That's when I explained to my kids when Betamax and video came out, VHS and Betamax, and it was just pretty soon they're glazing over and they don't even care. It was a big deal.
Yeah, my parents had the same discussion about heat track.
I've learned something about the rate in which entertainment technology, communications technology is progressing. I was always I always admired how my grandfather took such good care of this Philco wooden radio that stood, it looked like it was brand new the entire time. So I took really good care of my things. So now I have the world's largest collection of brand new, obsolete electronic equipment. Just completely useless.
Not just a little obsolete,
Yeah.
like really obsolete.
Really obsolete. You can't plug things into it anymore.
Yeah. Okay, well, with the quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call, Commissioner Buck,
Here.
Commissioner Rooney,
Here.
Commissioner Holden, Commissioner Goodsa, and Commissioner Evans are not present. Commissioner Swenson
Here.
and Commissioner Talcott. Okay, would you all stand for pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that required board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. The agenda consists of the approval of the board meeting minutes from June 30th, payroll checks totaling for June $70,089.83, and July $112,537.98. Maintenance and operation checks from June, checks 415 through 487 totaling $222,223.19, and July checks 22488 through 557 totaling $243,893.18. And we have also included to approve the passenger facility charge totaling June of $140,000 and July of $60,000, as well as the financial reports for June and July. Are there any comments or changes to the consent agenda? Okay, then without objection, the consent agenda is hereby approved. I can't do that? Then why do you keep writing it on there so that I'll read it?
I don't have your notes. Sorry.
Some people say it's okay to do that.
I know.
But just for you, I'll say, is there a motion to the effect of the consent agenda?
I I move that we accept the consent agenda as read.
It's been moved and seconded. No comments or questions? All those in favor of approval of consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Consent agenda is passed. Do we have a report from
We
our
do.
director?
We do. We've got a number of things I'll go through fairly quickly. On the project update, if you've been reading the weekly reports, obviously we started construction about a month ago, and right now we're still in the grading process. The edge drains are being installed on the runway and taxiway, and I think we'll start hauling rock, sounds like next week, for subbase, which puts us on a paving schedule about 3 weeks from now. Probably the first paving will start. We're still, hopefully today, although I thought last week we had gotten resolved the cable issue, we encountered the radar cable at a lot shallower depth than anyone expected, heading out to the radar underneath the taxiway. And it's taken us now a month, really, working with the FAA on the approved cable specification. We got into a week-long discussion on armored versus shielded, which it seemed to be everybody talking past each other, but I think we finally have this all resolved. At today's meeting, everyone agreed what cable we could order, and the contractor will be ordering that. So we will have a little change order there to reroute this cable. It's going to have to go deeper. And then we have had some savings, though. We encountered sandstone at a higher depth than expected. The borings we took out there had it at one level. It's a little bit higher, so we'll save quite a bit of aggregate. The FAA agreed to allow us to use the sandstone in lieu of excavating the sandstone and bringing other rock back in. Probably a good decision. The sandstone is very strong and drains quite well. So we think all in all, an improvement there will save us a little bit of money. So the project is roughly on schedule. We might be a week or so behind, depending on how the conduit work or the cutover delays the project. They've got to go in there and excavate a deeper cable path. They've got to do a 100 pair splice of copper. So they've got to splice over 100 different actual pairs of copper in order to get the signal to go. And ideally, those signals will come up with a good strength, and they'll bury the conduit, and we'll be back into getting our project underway here in a week or two. It's a big mess out there. I mean, they've got everything torn up. They've got a lot of equipment moving around as they wrap up that excavation and their pipe crews in place. They're doing quite a bit of work. Contractors have been terrific to work with. Any other thing we should point out in that project at this point?
You got it. Most of it. It's really busy. They're got a lot of different things going at once out there, so I think they're keeping on schedule. They seem to have plenty of manpower and equipment.
A lot of equipment and manpower. Yeah, and they'll be paving the SRE yard here in about 3 weeks too. So we'll get that done, which we're real excited about that. It turned out to be a good decision to delay that. You remember we were at $100 oil when that project was done 2 years ago. So we'll get a nice savings on what we would have paid to have that paved during the project several years ago. So,
John, you think they'll finish this year?
I think so. Yeah, they seem very committed to getting the people up here to get it done, and a lot depends on fall weather. If we have a really wet fall, it'll be trying to get it done. But I mean, they're going to have the rock in place here in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think they'll start paving in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. So if they can
try and end before the season.
Yeah, if they can at least get that first lift of asphalt down, then everything will be weatherproofed, and then all they need is a couple of warm days so they can get future additional lifts on top of it. And then the grooving, the painting might be a stretch because you're getting into cold temperatures, and the FAA specification is fairly tight on paint. But we could always put down temporary marking and come back in the springtime and wrap that up. So yeah, I'm confident we've got a decent shot at it, as long as we don't have a horrible fall.
The FAA specifications aren't just tight on paint.
Yeah, they're tight on everything. That's true. They're tight on everything.
John,
Yeah.
what will the impact be on radar approach control during the period where you're splicing the cable?
We'll be down for up to a week, at least 3 days. They'll be on the regional radar, so they'll have a lot worse resolution on the radar in and around the airport. So that'll probably affect the minimums, I would think, won't it, Rob?
I think it changes the minimums a little bit, but they're using that long-range radar that's up by Bootlegger,
Right.
and I guess it just, well, it covers a larger area, so it's
My guess is what it will do is it'll have them bring the air traffic in at a higher altitude, and they'll have to join the approach farther out.
Farther out so they can see them better. That's probably
It
true.
won't affect their landing.
No, the
It'll
only thing I
just affect being vectored to final.
right, and like I said, I think the minimums will probably go up a little bit too, would be my guess.
that's what Tony was.
Yeah, because they can't see them so low to the ground. That's one of the problems with all the radar coverage around here. Things close to the ground are hard to pick up.
Oh, for their approach path sequencing on their bright scopes.
Yeah,
Okay, so they can make sure they have the correct spacing between aircraft.
right, spacing and, yeah. But all in all, it sounds like, the tower's okay with it. They don't want to be down 2 or 3 weeks, but if it's a week, they're committed to that outage, so.
Very comfortable with the week.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it on that. It's reappointment time again. The city will want to know who's interested in being reappointed. We have 2 positions that are up for reappointment. And I believe it's, help me again, Commissioner Hoven and Commissioner Gutsa. So neither are here, so that announcement doesn't help a lot. We'll email them and make sure that we get them that information. The city would typically like to start advertising in September if we've got a vacancy. So, we're also on the schedule to receive an AIT body imager. This is the piece of equipment that we've been battling for since we opened the checkpoint nearly 3 years ago. This is the machine where you stand like this. The big advantage of that is we'll be able to see medical implants. And so all the folks that have the artificial limbs or artificial knees, hips, all those things will be able to go through the checkpoint without a pat down.
Isn't it a bit of a surprise? Didn't they do an about face on there?
Several times. I guess that's to me that's not a surprise anymore. But so we were supposed to have received it. The whole reason we did the checkpoint when we did it is because FAA wanted to install them. Then we got about a month or 2 before opening the checkpoint, and they decided they were going to take them out of all small airports. So they actually physically removed them from Helena and Kalispell, who had a checkpoint that was large enough to accommodate them. So they got theirs about a year before we were supposed to get ours. So they went for a while without them, and now they're bringing them back into the small airports. We've been fighting for some time, and both senators have actually asked about it in testimony with TSA leadership about our imagers. So supposedly it'll be here by Christmas, and so that it will be a great advantage for the folks with those medical devices because they won't require a pat down. And we've had I can't even count the number of incidents in the last year of people that have been in that checkpoint for a half an hour because the scenario is almost always the same. The folks go in, they have a knee or a hip, the machine alarms. They are also on some type of heart medication, or they've been using glycerin, lotion, so the explosive machine goes off, and then they get a series of more aggressive pat downs back in the room until they can be vetted. And that by the time they get done with that, a whole half hour has elapsed. And these folks, in many cases, their family is looking for them, and it becomes a big incident. And many veterans have been subjected to this. And that we received just a parade of letters and emails complaining about these procedures. So we really feel that's going to be a massive increase in customer service for these folks.
Will the metal detector stay in place as
It
well?
does. It's
So you get two rounds?
they like to have secondary ways to screen you. So that's exactly what they'll have a metal detector there. Some people actually pass through the metal detector. There's some variability in there, so they can't predict what kind of scanning you're going to get. So they'll tell some people go through the metal detector, most people will go through the imager. And then if you go through one and the alarm on it, they'll send you through the other one to see if they can get you through that, instead of everybody having to go to a pat down. So now they'll have several ways to screen you, which is good. And in addition, they actually get a couple more people in the checkpoint. So that'll be a nice improvement once we have that machine in place.
Goes faster too, doesn't it?
In the end, at first I resisted that, but I understand what they're saying now. So there's a random check that if you have a metal detector only, you have to random check, say 1 in every 20. I'm making that number up. But it's about twice the number of people that have to be randomly checked if you have an AIT. Because in addition to being able to see the medical devices, the AIT can see any type of surgical implant. So if somebody is trying to sneak something through, it's a much better screening capability. So they reduce the random number of checks that you have to do. So the entire process moves faster when you have an AIT, so the line will actually be shorter. So yeah, all in all, it'll be a big improvement. I know, some people have been worried about the naked image. They fixed that with the, now there's a stick figure that they see and less than area alarms, and they see that in very high resolution, so they can see what that device is. So the early complaints seem like they've been vetted out now, largely. You do get some radiation, but it's less than a cell phone call. So all in all, I think the public is generally accepting of this technology now. The last thing I was going to report, traffic is down a little bit. We've been tracking so far this year, we're down about 2.9% coming into August. The Canadian traffic is certainly part of that. We saw that around spring break in April and May. There was a pretty good decline in the amount of traffic, mainly on Allegiant, but some on Alaska. And then we're also seeing a little bit of downturn in local traffic, we think. Short-term parking transactions have been down most of the months of the year. And short-term parking is typically drop-offs and pickups, which means they're local folks, usually, during the April timeframe, especially because it's people that are picking up or dropping off people to travel and paying that short-term parking fee. Obviously, the Canadians can't use that because they don't want to drop them off. So generally speaking, it's your local folks. So we think there's a little bit of downturn here locally. We'll see as we get into fall. The Canadian dollar has recovered some, so we're hoping that fall will recover some with that. But we think the leisure side, there is a little bit of slowdown in the Great Falls market right now. On the inbound side, however, we did quite well with our marketing campaign. The number of visits to Genuine Montana are actually up for the year. The Chicago flight, about half that traffic was Chicago native traffic. The flights did very, very well, exceeded 90% loads in July, about 87% in June. So it actually performed better than United had thought in terms of passengers. The fare was a little bit weaker, but overall the flight seems to have done quite well. And so Went's here to kind of go through some of the program that we put out this year for marketing. Every year we have a follow-up session with them on the marketing plan we put out. This year's program, we had some state money. We received $30,000 for Chicago. So I think in total we spent about $110,000 on our out-of-market campaign, 30 of which came from the state, and about another, was it 40 came from the hotels? 30 or 40 that came from the hotels.
Now I don't have anything to say. Thanks, John. As John said, Went developed a campaign for warm season consumer this spring, and John and Laura asked us to come up because it did phenomenally well. We're very pleased with the results. As John mentioned, we did have partnerships, which are always beneficial when you're putting together a marketing campaign. You're welcome. T-Bid, Great Falls T-Bid, Great Falls CBD participated, as well as a grant from the Montana Office of Tourism, and we are seeking that again. Do you guys have yours? Yeah, we're good. Okay. So I will turn it over to Pam, our senior media buyer, planner and buyer. I'm Johnny Wilcox, by the way, and she'll walk you through the highlights.
Yeah, highlights here. We've been pleased to work with the Airport Authority for a number of years now on your marketing campaigns for tourism. This year we tackled sort of a new concept called native advertising, which is a little bit more in terms of just more than a banner ad, more than just a mobile ad. It's more engagement, it's more in depth. And so we developed in some of the key markets that we wanted to focus on native content pieces, which if you look here, this is the first one we did. This was in Seattle. We used the Seattle Times, and they also brought in sort of a partnership piece as well. They bonused in almost 500,000 impressions and built sort of a microsite for a sweepstakes we gave away a trip to Great Falls, and it was really well received. We developed 5 stories, and you can see them here. There's like little 5 content pieces that explain the beauty of Montana, the history, how Great Falls has it, and win a trip to Great Falls. And then, of course, the Seattle Times supported it with an Enter to Win sweepstakes page, sweepstakes banner ads, and we had over 3,000 page views just on those content pieces, and 1,500 contest entries. About 483 people wanted more information. They opted in for more information. Time spent was over 3 minutes and 24 seconds, which is above the norm. So when we look at these content pieces, we look at average time spent on reading content and the engagement, and this was way above, and we see this continually throughout the other markets that we have done this in. You'll see in Chicago it was a lot of time spent. Our sweepstakes promotional units, we had banner ads, a showcase, wallpaper units, all of them. If you look at the numbers here, I'll just kind of give you a metric. The click-throughs, we had over 4,700 click-throughs, which translates to a click-through rate, and click-through rate is the CTR. Anything above 0.08 is phenomenal. So, especially on just banner ads, if you're just looking at pure banner ads, anything over a 0.08 is tremendous. And so you can see here that just in the engagement pieces, people saw it, they read it, they clicked on the links, they spent time on it, they looked at the photography, the galleries that we had set up in this, and they entered to win the sweepstakes. So in Seattle, we had over 1 million impressions in the Seattle market in April and May, and 4,700 click-throughs with a really strong click-through rate, which translates in cost of a cost per click of $2.11. So super efficient in the Seattle market. We were really pleased with how that came about, and our winner came from Seattle and did their little river trip and spent the day and went to the museum, and it was a great little contest for them.
How did that translate for how full the Alaska planes were? Of course, we didn't have as many in Alaska.
We didn't have as many, so Alaska was very full. Very full, and we had the same schedule as Helena. We put on about 20% more passengers. So we're defending that market because we want more seats next summer. And so I think we did a really good job. They hit 86%, I believe, in June, and they were up over, I want to say they were over 90 in July. I haven't seen August yet, obviously. But I think we've got a really strong argument for at least another flight per week. We're actually going to probably ask for 6 flights a week, up from 3. So, this market, and then we're beginning to recruit the Portland market, because right now it flows through Seattle, and then after we get the Seattle flights full, the Portland would be the next market we would go after for a new flight. So we actually had an accompanying piece in Portland.
Yeah, and you'll see
that because again, and San Francisco, which again, San Francisco flows through Seattle on Alaska's network. So we reach beyond that Seattle hub to begin to recruit passengers onto those Seattle flights.
And a lot of the rationale behind positioning the Genuine Montana message in the Seattle market is to have that competitive message in that market. We're competing with Western Montana, Glacier, Kalispell, Missoula. So having these content pieces that sort of tell the story of Genuine Montana and what there is to do here is also very, very compelling, and introduces that Seattle market that might be very interested in Montana but just goes to Glacier, just goes to Missoula, just goes to Whitefish. They need to learn more, and they did. Astonishingly, they did. They read all this content.
Do you do the marketing for the non-genuine Montana on the other side too?
For
Kalispell, Missoula?
We were the agency for Glacier. We were, yes, so we sort of know the business, yeah, what's happening there. On Chicago, we did a very specific and kind of tweaked the creative a little bit too on the Chicago side. Again, this was native content. We did 2 stories with the Chicago Tribune, the gateway, and why this summer would be like nothing before. And again, just really positioning Great Falls as your gateway to Glacier Park, the Bob Marshall Wilderness. the wild and scenic, different from other messaging that the state might have had or things that they might be seeing from other regions and CBDs. We had these 2 stories. These 5 minutes and 19 seconds an average reader spent on these 2 stories, which is incredible. This was, let's see, oh, it's on the next one, but over a minute. So they truly were engaged. So content pieces on the Chicago Tribune that were these 2 surpassed their average by over a minute. Scroll depth, they also went down farther than other content pieces that they normally have on there. 7% farther down on the Great Falls campaign than other campaigns. It was supported by what we call driving units, little text ads that push the links and people click on the links and then it takes them to this content page. Over 200,000 impressions on content driving links. We also supported it with some banner ads on mobile and on desktop, and also through an exchange network. So no matter what you were looking at, whether you were on the Chicago Tribune or if you were just reading about Chicago Cubs and you're a sports fan, you would have seen and been exposed to the Genuine Montana message. We had over 1.6 million impressions in the Chicago market for the first flight. We had an email as well with the Chicago Tribune. We bought their email, and that had over 8,900 opens and a really strong response rate for clicks. Overall, this one did really, really well, again, exceeding our benchmarks for this campaign. Chicago is an expensive media market, so it's not a surprise that it was about $9.96. And again, this was comprehensive. There was native content, mobile ads, and an email. Next page.
There's a couple key takeaways from Chicago. Do you have more Chicago there?
I don't, that was Chicago. I was moving on to San Francisco.
The key takeaways that I saw from the Chicago campaign, if you track the Google Analytics from the Genuine Montana website, we've had over 250,000 visitors to that site since it went live in 2012. This year, Chicago actually exceeded all other origins for visits to that website. So Chicago is the #1 origin for click-throughs to that website. It generated a tremendous amount of traffic from Chicago. Chicago was up about, I think it was 300% in terms of visits to the site from the year prior. And so I think that's a real illustration of the kind of traffic we were driving. And when you look at the number of passengers, this year we went head-to-head with Kalispell. First year for both markets to have the Chicago flight, we actually out-and-planed them. That's remarkable because Kalispell does twice our volume in the summertime. When you look at the total month over month, they will do twice the number of passengers as we did. But head-to-head on a new market, we were able to actually out-and-plane them. So that really sort of shows you what's possible. Chicago is our 15th largest city pair. It's not even a top 10 market for us. So we were able to reach out to a market that's fairly far down in our city pair destinations, put a significant marketing campaign, beat a competitor that typically has more traffic than us, and make the route successful. And I think that's a real great indicator of what might be possible for us in the future with other markets like in Atlanta or maybe a San Francisco eventually, some of these other large metro markets that you see that we've begun to concentrate marketing on over the last 4 or 5 years to begin to recruit those markets up. I think it's really good because it says there are probably other weekend destinations for the summer that we could begin to go after and fill.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the next week I'll be talking to United about this route. I talked to our consultant this week and he says that we should either ask for daily or at least 1 more flight per week. He says it's sometimes easier to get daily because then they don't have to allocate the plane between markets. But at a minimum, we think the route will be back with more seats next year. And probably we can extend the season a couple weeks into August and maybe another week into June too, based on the way it performs. So all in all, I think a very successful project given out of Chicago.
So John, explain this to me. You said, do we have the same number of planes coming in from Chicago as the Flathead does?
Yeah, we both had weekend service. They announced the Kalispell a little later than ours, but we both had the exact same schedule.
Okay, so if we had more emplanements, does that mean that their flights were just as full, I presume?
Not quite as full.
Not quite as full.
Yeah.
But for us to get, does that mean that their passengers came from other than Chicago?
No, I imagine they probably had a pretty strong Chicago group too.
So how do we get more,
And about 3 or 4, maybe more passengers, how we
get more passengers?
I think, well, now we have the demographic breakdown of that flight. We know where beyond Chicago they came from. Philadelphia, for example, was another big contributor. And we talked about this when we did when we looked through this last week. Next year, we can tailor that marketing package to include some Philadelphia. Cleveland's in the top 20, Raleigh-Durham's in the top 20, which is a very odd city pair for us. That's like a bottom, top 25 to 50 market. But we can go after some of those markets and begin to push them through that Chicago flight, because we can kind of fine tune where the traffic actually comes from now. So next year we need to do that, and we need to have another good-sized marketing campaign. Realistically, once you get up to 90% load, that you're talking the only fares left are very high. So next year, by having more seats in the market, it's going to create more lower fare seats. So the route itself will likely do better with nothing changed, because the last couple seats on a plane are going to be the $1,000 seat. The average fare on this flight was about $400 round trip, which is a good competitive East Coast fare.
You can sell a lot of those.
Yes, you can sell a bundle of them, and next year there'll be more at that rate. So, we think, just by doing the same thing, we can actually bring more passengers through. But we also have better intel now about where those passengers came from, so that we can reach beyond Chicago into some of those origin markets that should help this flight be successful, like Philadelphia.
That's very interesting. And again, this is the second, third year of just some sustained marketing efforts in the Chicago market, but this was the first year that we really did in-depth native content marketing, where people could learn more, read more, engage with the content within a trusted media site, rather than just going right to Genuine Montana. So they spent some time on the Chicago Tribune site learning, finding out more. That looks amazing, this photograph is beautiful, I want to go there. And then they came, and then they booked a ticket, so we can see that as well. So in San Francisco, we also did similar kind of campaign in San Francisco. Again, these are tiered in terms of the media markets, so this one wasn't as costly. Chicago is a little bit more costly. We did put more dollars into the Chicago market to make sure that it was impactful and would bring results. San Francisco was one of the first ones we did. That sort of was the test launch, and it was in end of March. Same kind of thing. We had one story, but with some leading ads. And this one story had a video on it, and it had carousel, and they developed a poll as well. And you can see the poll, what activity do you enjoy most? Again, just very interactive
And
piece.
interestingly, those activities are very close to the state data of what people actually did when they come to Montana. Because the state pulls them on the exit, and it was interesting because it mirrors almost perfectly what people actually do when they come.
Yeah, and so San Francisco Chronicle, and they call it SF Gate. We contracted for 1 million impressions. They over-delivered. They bundled in their Extend network, which brought in the CNN, the Washington Post, the Travel Channel, the Food and Wine Network. All of these other sites pushed out this content through those driving units. The one thing that they explain here is there was over 51,000 brand engagements, higher than what we contracted for. So just bringing in that additional network exchange inventory really boosted that up. Total page views of 49,000 page views just on this content piece. 4 minutes and 12 seconds, again, kind of the same amount of time engaging on the content. That was 350% higher than the average that they see at 56 seconds. Scroll depth of 71%, again, 63% higher than 43%, which is their norm. So very, very strong in the San Francisco market, and we don't really have a direct flight from there. So again, just a sustained amount of interest from that California
We
market.
picked that one because on United's network, it'll feed through Denver. We wanted to kind of backfill anybody that might be coming through Chicago to make sure we didn't make a vacuum in Denver. And then also it's a strong Alaska market through Seattle. So it's strategic. And eventually it would be a market we'd pursue direct service to
Right.
down the road.
And competitively, yes, and also the
To
state.
San Fran or Seattle?
San Francisco, yeah.
And we also see from the state metrics that California, Northern California,
Yeah.
San Francisco market is a
Big feeder for Montana.
big feeder for Montana. So we wanted to make sure our message was out there in those competing messaging. Again, so that was San Francisco. We did a small placement in Portland, and it off the chart.
Portland is an interesting market. It's rocketing up in terms of popularity for us. It was probably around 20 3 or 4 years ago, and it's now in the top 10 in terms of city actual travel between the two cities. And I noticed a week or so ago, Helena had on the TV had a consultant come in and talk about their markets, and Portland's all the way up to their number 2 market now. So this region, for whatever reason, Portland is becoming a popular travel destination back and forth. So we see potential there, and that would be the logical growth beyond Seattle for us in the Alaska network.
Right. So in the Portland market, we did the Oregonian sponsored content. We did 1 story, and we got well over 200,000 impressions. Again, driving units to link the story to those ads. Over 1,000 click-throughs, which was a super high click-through rate. Again, the Portland reader wanted to learn more about this part of Montana and engaged with it. They had 744 page views, 2 minutes and 16 seconds, engagement rate of 92%. So on that page for longer than 5 seconds. So they engaged, read through, clicked on links. So this one did really well.
We're finding out how many people are coming here just by the tickets.
Yeah, we can. So we have a couple of metrics. We've got the Google Analytics, which tell us how many people are coming to the website from where, and that has some basic demographic information, male, female, age group, some opt-in information if they're hikers or bikers or whatever.
What media site that
so we
they
can
track.
see who's looking at coming, and then about 6 months later, we get data from the airlines called the origin destination data that we can see where people actually came from. In the case of Chicago, we're getting faster data because we have a guarantee on the route, so they're sharing data with us quicker in order to get compensated for any losses, because we have an agreement with them to do that. So the Chicago data is much faster than what we're used to. In springtime, we'll be able to go back and look at how our city pairs changed for the summer. So we do both those things. We know a lot about Chicago now because we have detailed information given to us by United. But we'll have better information about the overall market. The only problem with that is we don't know which flight they used to get here. We might know they came from San Francisco, but we don't know if they came from San Francisco on United or if they came from San Francisco on Alaska. We can see the overall market share by each of those carriers, but we can't tell subtle changes in how that market share changed.
Do the hits and clicks pretty much translate through the tickets?
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
they
definitely.
did.
I mean, well, Chicago's a great example. I mean, we have a massive increase in the amount of Chicago traffic, which translates right to the amount of increase in genuine Montana traffic.
Right.
So yeah, when we've advertised, I mean, well, we had a slide a couple years ago we divided our top 20 markets into markets we advertise in and markets we don't. We never put ads in DC because it's very expensive, and because DC people go home in the summertime because they're usually not from DC. So they're going back wherever they came from. They're not a great vacation market. Orlando's a top 20 market. We don't ever advertise in Orlando, right? Because it's an importer market. But of the top 10 that we've advertised in, we've been able to move the origin and destination up by, I think, an average about 30%. We've been able to stimulate that traffic by 30% compared to the other markets that we don't advertise in, which was about 6%. Chicago was a good one because we were able, before this route came in, we were able to increase Chicago traffic by about 38% since 2011 up to 2014. So, that helped us get this market. So yeah, the advertising has.
It does.
I just wonder if it was straight 1,000 clicks to a seat or anything.
No, yeah,
Metrics
we've
like
never
that,
really
or whatever
tracked
the
it that
numbers are.
close.
There is a little
Yeah.
bit of conversion data here, but it doesn't necessarily say by which airline or what.
Right.
It just kind of, I'll
Question.
kind of go through that.
Would it be feasible to insert a link to the United web page inside the app, so that people who were really interested, they could go to the United site and buy their tickets that way? And that way we would have a connection between those clicks and
The widget. The
So what we
widget
do
does
is we bring them back to our website, right? Because we want to track that data. And on our website, there is a link to United. So we want to capture them back to finish the sale on them. This is what you do here. Here's
Yeah.
more information about it. Here's why you should come. And then from our website, they can go. They can go.
They
to
can
the
go book
But there's no way of knowing if they actually click on the United web link and go to their
They
buy
complete a
ticket.
transaction. No.
We have this data, which I'll go through here on this last page. It's called Sojourn.
Okay.
And Sojourn is a travel platform that actually has that
They
conversion
have a
data.
cookie that they get
They
you
know,
if you eventually book.
yeah, if you booked, if you went to a
So
hotel.
You can correlate the clicks, if you will.
Yeah, not to the depth of this whole campaign, but we do know from the Sojourn data what happened,
Okay.
so. And just to finish out here, we did a little bit deeper sort of boost in the Chicago market. We placed on the CBS Chicago sites, the CBS television, CBS radio sites. Again, multimedia, just big presence on there. Biggest media in that market, about 400,000 impressions. We had 523 click-throughs. This was mostly mobile and display. A little bit higher, but again, that's in the Chicago market. Sojourn, again, is a travel platform. It just is an aggregate of everything travel related. So your Hiltons, your Choice Hotels, your United, your anything airline, anything travel. Sojourn has conversion data, and we placed, and this was a joint venture piece. So this was also a partnership with the Great Falls CVB, the Great Falls TBID, and it was also sort of a match by the state. The state tourism office matches the amount of inventory. So if we buy $12,000 worth of inventory, the state matches that $12,000 as well. So we got 3,600,000 impressions. Of that, we divided up into the different units, sort of the box, the skyscraper, the leaderboard on the top, the different units and how they perform. You can see that the skyscraper unit on the side, which is where you look and where you're booking, you're looking at things, your fares, all that stuff, did the most, did the best in terms of click-throughs. And then when we looked at our geo-targeting, California, most impressions were served there. An amazing number of click-throughs there, 0.18. Oregon, 0.63. So again, not as many impressions in the Oregon market, but the number of clicks and then the click-through rate is just a huge interest market there for Portland and Oregon in total. Washington, mostly in the Seattle market, 500,000 impressions. Again, a really, really high click-through rate. And then in the Chicago market, 800,000 impressions, 704 clicks, but 8% click-through rate, again, at benchmark. Centro is a huge ad-serving network we use to serve ads. And again, we did these in markets, Washington, San Francisco, Chicago, Denver. Over 2 million impressions, 6,800 click-throughs, 0.34. So very, very strong interest, very efficient cost per click of $1.45. Wave Direct is a third-party email service that we use to buy travel-centric lists. These are people who have a very strong interest in outdoors, experiences, vacations, and travel. So we bought this list in the Seattle market, the Denver market, and Chicago, equally, about 40,000 in each. It sent it out in April 12th. You can see here that pretty much equal open rate of the people who actually opened the email based on the subject and their interest. Surprisingly, in the Chicago market, 678 clicked through. So again, that market is an emerging market, one that has a great deal of interest in this area, and click to open was 12.42, which is extremely high. So those emails did very, very well. And then we got a little bit of money from the state tourism office, sort of a grant, and we were able to do a supplement campaign at the end in May through June. Again, another e-blast, a different list, different aggregate of people that travel, again, travel interests, vacations. Almost 50,000 served or got that impression in their email. 7,300 opened it, which was really high for a secondary email. And 935 click-throughs, again, super, super high in terms of click-through rate and click-to-open. Very efficient in terms of the overall cost per click. We did a little bit of support with Google Ad Network. So again, we had ad exchanges all over the place. So if you saw an ad that came from different sources, Chicago Tribune, we used 2 more emails from their email list, and then also did some more travel related placement on their travel site, 400,000 impressions there. Again, really, really strong. The secondary flight did really, really well. And again, same thing with CBS Chicago. Secondary flight was super, super strong. Lifted that all up. We had over about 13 million impressions, 38,000 click-throughs, solid CTR of 0.30. So overall cost per click of $2.60. So That is the campaign as it was. This document is the document from Sojourn, which sort of outlines how they track the visits to all their various travel platform aggregates, whether it was a Hilton Choice or a travel or airline booking. They saw 5,800 searches, 168 confirmed travelers to Great Falls, 1,700 hotel nights. Overall, based on the number from the state that says in Montana, the average traveler spends $362 a day. Turned out to be about $60,000 in terms of traveler spend in Great Falls.
And that's just the one piece of the marketing.
Just from what they could track.
Sojourn.
Just from what they could track.
Yeah, because they do have, you know, some kind of cookie or something that's able to track that.
Yeah, what's interesting is, you know, it tracks the departure dates. It's things you do know, and I think you confirmed most of this data is pretty much right out of your airport studies. So we know when they come, the most popular days that they saw in terms of searches, all of that. So this is just some background information on the Sojourn placement that they provide as sort of a conversion tracking report. So happy to have worked on this. It was really a great campaign. We were excited to bring the results to you.
So what's it cost us per person that we get to fly in Great Falls?
Well, so the average passenger is worth about $20 between you know, rental car, grants, PFC, and concessions. And we've increased the summer traffic by about, I think the number's about 25% in the last 4 years. So that's, I think we figured a couple thousand per month. So, you know, we're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $10, you know, per passenger, you know, for the additional summer bump. And, you know, like I said, they're worth about $20. We figure we get $4 in employment for entitlements, $4.50 for PFCs, rental car concession, and food and beverage directly from the passenger. And we, you know, the landing fees and stuff, we don't really equate into that, but yeah, we figure the summertime is the only way we'll be able to build the flight volume. We have to start with summer because that's when the flights are available when we're at our peak. And then in the case of like Seattle, for example, you know, if we can get that up to a 6-day summer schedule, that equates to probably a 4-day fall schedule and a 4-day spring schedule. Over time, we want to get that to a 6-day or 7-day morning flight so that we can eventually have that be a full year-round 2-flight-a-day schedule.
So the answer is $10?
Yeah, we think we're spending probably in the neighborhood of $10 per passenger to get the additional passengers in.
For $20 in revenue, that's
Yeah.
a good investment.
And we look at it at the amount of traffic and clicks we sent to the website. So in terms of a media expenditure and did we deliver the clicks, it was $2.60 per click. But then you have to factor, yeah. When you
For
have
a
to,
person clicking, and 5 have to click before they buy a ticket.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
Right, and then some of them may not actually go to the website. They were looking for a trip
Right.
and to Great Falls because they have family here. And so,
Right.
you know, we do get some that may not go to the website but do book.
I think some of those are in Portland. I think there's a lot of.
well, and
Portland
again,
next- or
right.
Great Falls next to Pat's in Portland.
And also, you know, the fact that when you're searching for a trip and you're in the Chicago market or the Seattle market, and you're looking for, how can I get there?
Cheap.
You know, you're competing with Bozeman and Helena and Kalispell and Missoula, so they are probably price shopping and looking for the best route to get here. And we
Well,
want it to be in that
What they're gonna
that
do when you
messaging
get there.
environment.
And you know, I think for us, I mean, you know, as we started this a few years ago, part of the theory is there's a lot of people that want to go to Glacier, aware of Glacier, want to go to Glacier,
Come to Montana.
but are not aware of the Great Falls link to Glacier because they've never been told that. And so it's part of it's an education piece. You know, we may plant that seed this year and not get a trip out of them for a year or two, but at least it enters their thought process to check both markets. Because generally speaking, we have about a 25% cost advantage on rental cars, flights, and hotels to Kalispell in the summertime. You know, so it's part of it's an education piece too.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this. One thing that we did not do this year was Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And that was,
Yeah, and we saw a definite degradation in the Minneapolis flights this summer. I mean, the load factor is down. So
look at
Well, some of
that.
those Chicago people.
some of those people are Chicago, people trying to get to the East Coast. Yeah, and so there is some switch over.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think part of it is too that we're just not advertising there.
Yeah.
Too bad, Delta.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, the art board.
Yeah, we've been approached by a local person, same person that has given us the Lewis and Clark paintings on loan, about doing a piece of art in the terminal near the Delta Minneapolis gate that would depict Lewis and Clark's journey in Montana. And so, yeah, this is a piece of his motorcycle that he had done many years ago. I don't know how he got it off there. Hopefully, he didn't wreck it. But he wants to do something similar to that on an art board in the neighborhood of the Delta Gate there. I'm just kind of showing how Lewis and Clark got through the state. It would be probably more of a museum quality piece than this. This is, like I said, on a motorcycle fairing. It's relatively small and had to be kind of hand done. But his plan is to have something manufactured to be underneath plexiglass, and we'd mount it to that wall there to kind of give the folks passing through a little bit more information about Lewis and Clark and our region. He would do this at no cost to us to display that information.
So we need approval from the board?
Yeah, I told, we indicated to him we'd take it to the board and see if there's interest there. My thought would be to probably circulate the actual draft product before we agree to it, so that everybody can kind of have an idea what the final piece would look like. But obviously, before he spends any money on that, we'll make sure there's interest from the board in doing that.
I missed the size of this project.
The wall is really big, so it'd probably be, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 feet tall at least, and then the width is limited to about 12 feet or so of wall panel that's
Oh, it's
there.
gonna be that big?
Yeah, it's a fairly good-sized wall piece, is what he's thinking of.
Is he considering, since it's large, is he considering putting some text boxes on the
Exactly.
artwork so that it talks to what took
And
place?
lighting and everything else?
Yeah, it'd be a combination of both, the artwork and then information about, these different places, that would describe what happened in those places.
Who's gonna decide how professional it is when it gets done? That's what would be my only concern.
Yeah, I think the idea from here would be to bring it back through the board. Once we're agreeable to having something like this done, then have him do a mock-up of what he's thinking and then bring that back through to kind of give a little bit more of a specific approval of the project.
Is it something that he would want to hand paint, or is it something that he would be willing to use, say, Google Earth imagery and produce?
I think he's going to have an artist do it. He had an artist paint this on his motorcycle. He's not an artist himself, so I think he would have somebody actually produce it.
How do we decide on the size?
It's what's there on the wall, and if you go around that corner there, there's rock wainscoting that goes up to probably close to 3 feet, maybe a little higher, and then there's a Coke machine that's there on that wall. So he's basically looking to fill that space there.
Is it about 10 feet or so?
Yeah, probably about a 10 to 12 foot area in there, and there's a seam in the wall at one point. So I think he's probably going to try to keep it in that sort of 10 to 12 foot section in there. But yeah, I think we have a lot of white space back there, particularly on those side walls. So there's plenty of room to do something like this if we're interested in doing it.
We're not committing to any money or anything yet.
No, there's no cost to it. He's just interested in knowing if we'd host it.
Are we committing to hosting it, or are we saying, sure, it seems like a good idea, but?
Yeah, let's see. I think what we'd say from here is
Yeah.
the board would like to, is interested in this. Why don't you produce kind of a mock-up of what you're thinking, and then let's just take it back to board. Probably not for a decision at that point, but just maybe a quick work through the work session to make sure everybody's comfortable with what he's doing.
So what do you need from us now?
Approval to do a project with him. I mean, we told him we'd bring it to the board because he is going to invest some money, in trying to put this together. So I think, the idea from here would be, yes, we'd like to have this, host this, or no, we're not interested.
Would it be helpful to have, produce a sample of a section to show what the completed detailed artwork might look like overall?
Well, that's what I'm kind of thinking is, if we go back to him and said, yes, we'd like, we're interested in hosting this project, that we'd go back to him and say, can you produce, kind of a mock-up of what you're thinking, before you produce it?
Interested to see the next step.
Yeah, so he really doesn't need anything from us, he just wants to know if we're interested.
Yeah, because I mean, at this point, he would go out and find an artist to do the project, and he's going to, like I said, spend some amount of money to move forward. So I think he's just.
But we aren't committed until we see the final.
Yep, we can. Yeah, I can phrase it that way.
So
Absolutely.
I guess I could make a motion that we proceed in authorizing them to create and submit a proposal for our review.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second it.
So it's been moved and seconded to,
Really, it's probably not outside of your responsibility anyway, this is just for him to feel comfortable to do it.
yeah.
Right. I don't think I commit to this with, just like we've got an airplane in here later that's trying to be donated, and I don't think the staff should be committing to hosting these things on a long-term
Oh,
basis.
sure, make us wear the black hat.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because by the time it's trouble, we'll be gone anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
We have to vote on the motion.
Yeah. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to allow it to go to the next step and letting him know that it's, we haven't approved it, it's all pending approval of the draft, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Do you want to sell a shop?
Try this again. So we've got the shop back in the agenda. In the last couple of months, the sale of AdMax's Calgary operation has been completed. So the Calgary operation is now owned by the Chinese company. I think it's Sun. The actual name Sun something. They are going to retain the American assets in Great Falls and Jacksonville under the prior ownership, John Binder. And so I think they're a little space constrained. There's probably some things that coming out of the Calgary operation, some of their parts and things like that they need to get relocated. And so Mauricio has indicated they would like to purchase the shop. They've lowered their offer somewhat from the last time we talked. They're now at $190,000 cash is what they're proposing. What we've said is in here, the appraisal of the building came in, $230 was the market value, and I think $258 was the replacement value. So what I'm suggesting is that we accept the $190,000 cash, and then we build about $1,000 a month in there over 40 years to recover the remainder of the appraised value. So we'd have $190,000 up front, and then we'd recover another $40,000 over 40 years at $1,000 per year.
$1,000 a year,
Yeah, per year.
not a month.
Not a month, no. 1,000, did I say month? Keep saying that.
And allow board members to park their RVs and airplanes in one of the buildings.
Good deal.
Very specific.
That's a good idea. And we would retain the sand bay. We had talked about that before. Until we can expand the building down at the other end, we really need to keep that sand bay. And they're okay with that for 2 years. We keep the sand where it is, which is a pretty good accommodation. I thought we'd also, financing is an issue for them because, obviously they're a trans-border organization. Most of its assets are in Canada. And so I thought we'd also offer, along with this, just in case it's helpful, that we might carry that 190 at 5% in order for a 30-year period to finance the transaction if they change their mind. You remember we kind of had some fits and starts on this, and I just thought that might be a helpful secondary offer to have if the board's comfortable with that. That rather than get $190,000 in cash, that we would offer to carry the $190,000 at 5% for 30 years if that's more attractive to them.
So we're offering it to them for $200,000?
Roughly about $230,000. The $40,000 comes in over 40 years, so we're financing a small piece of it at no interest.
Well, that's the financing, is carrying the note for the 40?
What I'm suggesting is the 40, we would just recover in the ground
Okay,
rent.
right. So we finance the
The 190,000, we might offer to finance at 5%.
190 or 200
190,000, we carry at 5%.
with no down payment?
No, but the building, if we repo it, it's just our building still, just like it is now.
So when they
Full
decide,
problems, yeah,
so when they decide to sell this location with the Chinese,
which they might,
then what happens?
they would transfer that with the sale, any
To
equity.
the Chinese?
Yeah, they would go with the equity. And they have indicated the Chinese are looking at the transaction. One of the things they said, it faces some regulatory hurdles because they do some Department of Defense work. And obviously, that's touchy.
Slight.
Sometimes more just.
Principally, yes.
So we would be right at the bottom of, in fact, slightly below the lower end of the appraisal range. The one thing I would point out about this building is that concrete center block building, it's a very good building. We have some older metal warehouses that in the airfield that we store a lot of stuff in active use. We're not under any pressure to sell this building. That would be a great warehouse for us eventually. But we do want to see AdMax grow and invest in our community. And so I'm comfortable going at that 230 right below the bottom end of the appraisal cycle, but I really am not that comfortable going lower than that. At that point, the building's pretty effective for our uses, and I'd say we probably would want to retain that. We could probably comfortably get another 5 or 10 years out of the warehouse buildings over there, but beyond that, we'll be looking at replacing those. We'd probably end up spending about this much to build new warehouse buildings at some point in the future anyway.
And this shop would not be suitable for those purposes?
It would be fine for storing stuff. Yeah, it would be great for a warehouse building. It's a concrete building with a rubber roof. It's really low maintenance. It'd be very effective for that kind of building. But where it's located, it's surrounded by AdMax uses. I mean, it is, for their uses, it's a good building. I think we want to see AdMax grow and do more. So I think it's worthwhile for us to do this transaction, but I wouldn't give away the farm because that building is a good building that we could make use of in the future if they don't buy it.
So just so I understand, they still, how about the ground underneath it?
They'd be renting the ground underneath, but it's, do you remember what that monthly amount is? It's very small.
On the order of $1.
It's probably in here.
Yeah, but
That's not $1,000 a year,
Yeah, I think-
$1,000 a year is not the ground underneath the building?
No, the ground underneath the building, it is in here, but I'll have to find it.
because unless I misunderstood, the three comparables were all fee simple. So I don't know that those are necessarily the best appraisals around because they get the dirt the building's on.
Dirt underneath.
That makes
Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
this one's different when you're still leasing for the rest of your life.
Right, yeah, you'd still have
Owning a building
it.
on leased land is a lot different.
So the annual ground rent is $2,150. And that's a little bit inflated because they want a yard outside of it. So we've carved off a piece of pavement where they could store things outside.
Most people that do own
Yeah.
buildings do want to
They'll have a little
drive
yard
around
in
the
there.
building.
Yep. Yeah, but, so we get $2,000 a year on the ground rent. So not a whole ton of money there.
And 40,000 goes away after 40 years.
Yep. Yeah.
And so really what we're looking at is if we need another building, can we put it up for what you're selling this one for?
Well, the replacement value is $250,000, so that's probably a pretty good indication. If we built this building, we're going to be looking at $250,000 to build a warehouse building for ourselves at some point. Because, and like I said, we probably can get 5 or 10 years out of the existing metal buildings we have. Yeah, at some point we will have to invest in new warehouse facilities because those buildings, I think are they World War II buildings?
Yeah, they're old barracks buildings.
They're old barracks buildings that were relocated. And I don't even think they're on a foundation, are they? Yeah, so at some point those are going to become too difficult to maintain and we'll have to build our own. But like I said, I think it's important for us to support AdMax, its growth, and this building would be useful for them. I kind of get the impression some of the stuff they're doing in Calgary now that the Chinese aren't going to do would flow down here. Some of the parts and things would be housed in this building. So I think it is a worthwhile cause.
Well, we don't realize any immediate cash bump in the sale.
190,000, the cash that they would pay up front.
If they pay it early, instead of taking that note.
It sounds like they're more interested in the cash, but right,
Oh, I see, I see.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm leaning more towards cash, because if you want commitment.
cash is king. Huh?
Well, yeah, and, you've got,
Sure.
if you finance it over 30 or 40 years, their equity in like 15 years is gonna be like $12.98. They're really
Yeah,
not gonna have
sure.
anything in it, they're just leasing the building.
Right.
If you want commitment, take the cash, and that's
Sure.
commitment.
The only reason I threw that, they didn't ask for that. I just know.
I thought they,
No, they didn't ask for the financing. I knew they were looking for a loan locally, and so given that we've, with all the projects we've done with AdMax, it's been difficult to actually get it transacted. I just thought this, might be another way to help them get it transacted.
get some, I would suggest getting some now.
Okay.
If they can't finance it.
I think your intent is 190 plus the $1,000 over 40 years. And if that becomes difficult, you would sweeten the pot by saying you could finance it.
Yeah, we could carry the carry.
Part of it.
Part of it, right.
Right.
Yeah, part of it, yeah.
The reason
To
I'm-
get to commitment.
The reason I asked about that is because if they are committed, they're probably less likely to wind up selling this part of the operation to the Chinese, right? Because otherwise, I would say if we're going to carry the note, then we should probably try to insert some mechanism by which it reverts to us.
Oh, it would always
in
be
the
that.
event, in the
Yeah.
event that it's sold to another.
Oh, if they lose their equity or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So
To provide disincentive for them to sell, and therefore incentive for them to continue to
there's not
expand.
much to negotiate, seeing as how this is a public meeting. I don't know what,
I just,
there gonna be any surprises to AdMax here.
You're playing poker with the cards pointed the wrong way.
So do we have a motion or
making
hold
sure
it?
that,
So,
making sure that the objective is consonant with
Yeah.
the incentives.
No, I agree. Again, I think that for us, the key is to try and, help them to grow. And that's the only reason we're interested in this. That they originally approached us about this building. We didn't approach them. They're interested in the building for the growth of their business. And I think that's the important part. It's, we're not trying to give the building away. So that's why we've got what I think is a reasonable offer here. Because I do think the building would be useful for us for a very long time. So I don't want to give it away. I think we do need to get a market value out of it. Whether or not we end up financing that $190,000, I think that's discretionary. If the board doesn't want to do that, I think that's comfortable. One thing I would say is, the way our business works, we're actually better off to get an income stream than we are to get a lump sum of money. Because with no interest being earned on any money we have in the bank anymore, it really doesn't do us any good to have that extra money in the bank. We might turn around and invest it down at the south end to get GA facilities to market faster, which would probably be a good thing to do with our money since we aren't earning any interest. But we're almost better off creating a long-term income stream through a 5% loan than we are to get the cash. Just one way to look at it.
It should be in the order of about $1,000 a month income stream.
Yeah.
and that's for the ground around, additional ground they want around, I'm confused about that.
So no matter what, we're going to get $2,000 a year in ground rent because that's just whether they buy
That's
it.
fixed. That's
or-
outside the 40 grand.
Yes.
The 40 grand is for,
To recover the rest of the fair market value of the building. So they're going to offer $190,000 in cash. There's about $40,000 to get close to the appraised amount. And so we're saying, okay, we understand you want to pay $190,000 cash, but we're going to generate this additional $1,000 per month in rent on the facility because you are getting infrastructure above what you're paying for. So we're basically we're recovering that small piece through the ground rent more or less over 40 years.
And AdMax is aware that there is a proposal to carry some of the note, right?
I told them we'd probably put something in there that, to at least discuss with the board, just because, like I said, the last couple of times we've done deals with them, it's taken some time to get them done. And so, I just thought that might, having two options approved might actually help us get to a transaction.
So if they said we'll just pay $230, there would be no ground rent?
Yeah, if they wanted to pay $230, we could just, well, no, there would be ground rent, there'd be $2,000 a month.
$2,000, that's always.
But we would drop
Would be the $1,000
the extra
a
$1,000, that we're trying to recover.
Excuse me, just before,
I keep saying per month, but it's per year.
30 years,
Per year.
you can't, I don't know if you go to a bank and get 30 years on.
30-year loan,
On a building like this. I think you're probably gonna be more in
20-year,
the 20-year range.
yeah,
A brand-new facility,
Sure.
you might be able to
yeah,
get 25.
good point.
You know,
Did they offer 190 in cash?
Yeah, that's what they're saying, is 190 in cash.
I assume you're holding that then unless it becomes necessary.
Right.
Yep.
They offered 190, but we're willing to enter into the 40. Did they offer 230 then, or, I'm looking still, I'm still.
No, we're
stuck
above
on
what
that.
they've offered, but again,
With-
at 190,000,
with the
I would just hold the building. What I'm saying is, we're gonna have to replace 2 warehouses in the next 10 years. I think, the replacement value of the building is 250. So that's a good general estimate of what the buildings would cost us when we go to rebuild.
You said they were aware of the 40 and they're comfortable with it.
Our offer last time, which was here, was 200,000, and we were gonna recover 50 over 40 years. You can see, that's what was approved back in August of last year. And we were really close to, they were close to agreeing to that at the time.
Because it doesn't show up as debt to them, or how are they?
Their
what's
tax,
the
I don't
sensitivity
know.
there? I don't know what they're.
Their taxes are odd, and they've asked us on everything, for some reason, they always want, even on finance deals, the ability to purchase written into the contract, because it must have something to do with their tax treatment, whether they can capitalize the asset or not. Yeah.
okay, is there a motion to this? John, move forward, thank you very much.
I kind of think, my first impression, it's a combination sale anyway, we just want to tie them in more, which we've always wanted to do, and if we don't have that much use for the building, we sell a building and we put one up when we actually need one, and that's what.
Where we want it,
Yeah.
rather than back in the corner.
Down in
So-
the corner.
I do understand your argument for the 5%, but
You don't want to do that?
I don't, because I think having 190,000, we can invest it wisely in something better that would get you a return greater than 5%, but.
But we won't,
That's
right? We won't do that.
Do what?
We won't invest it at 5%.
Well, not in a financial instrument, but in some project
okay,
within
okay.
the airport base, yes, I would
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah,
I think that's what John was suggesting.
Yeah, we would probably turn around and take that 190,000, help us get utilities down into the new GA area. It's likely where that would be lined up.
yeah.
Given that their offer and ours is somewhat separated, you're saying 190 and another 40 over 30 years, or another 40 over 40 years,
40
whatever
years.
it is. I just wouldn't even offer the financing. I think they could
Okay.
offer cash, take
Mhm.
cash, get the $1,000 and move on.
Yeah. Got a motion?
Well, how do you feel about that, John?
I think that's fine. Like I said, I knew they were looking for loans, so I just put that in there because, again, we've had such a hard time actually getting these done. So I was thinking, it might be an extra thing that we could offer,
Yeah.
try to get it done. But,
Okay,
So that was let them take 190 cash and
14 years at 1,000.
40,000 over X years,
over 40 years with no interest on that piece. Yeah.
and an ongoing land lease.
And ongoing land is $2,000 a year. Yeah.
A year?
Actually, $2,150 per year.
I move to accept or move forward with that offer.
is there a second?
Yep. I'll second that.
Any further
You're talking
discussion?
just cash.
All those in favor of the motion? 190 cash, $1,000 a year for 40 years. Land rent, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okey dokey. Are there any other agenda items that anything else anybody wants to bring up? Any comments? Commissioner Buck? Commissioner Rooney?
None for me.
Commissioner Simpson? I have none at this time. Is there any comments from the public at this time?
I'm just curious, as we talk about additional investment at the south end of the airport, what's the status of the construction of the hangars that have already been approved by the airport board to be built down on the south end? Are they being
So,
constructed right now, or?
yeah, there's two down there that we have approved the leases for, and I don't know where Kerry Gray is, do you know?
I don't know where he's
Yeah,
at.
and, you know, I don't think he's moving ahead right now, but the second one, it looks like some utility work should be done yet this construction season. We, he had to go
Is that the front
through.
range facility?
Yeah, the front range facility, they, it turns out they're gonna have to have their hangar sprinkled, you know, the international fire code now is all the way down to, I think, 20,000 square feet sprinkled facility. Yeah, it's really restrictive now, and so after doing some pressure calcs on the line that's down there in the GA area now, it's not enough pressure. You'd have to have quite a pump system to keep the pressures he needs. So it looks like what he's going to do instead is go get the bigger water line that goes to our SRE building near the frontage road and bring that down. So we met with the city, was it 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, and to kind of lay out the utility plan using that methodology. And so I think he's going to try to get that water line in yet this year. We had initially thought he wasn't going to try to get sewer, but now since it's so close, it looks like he's going to try to get sewer line underneath the taxi lane over to that last manhole near the Front Range Aviation hangar. So he's going to try to get sewer that way. So we've been trying to get the utilities ironed out over the last couple of months, and I think he's actually going to try to get the water line in yet this year. So he did finally get approval, which we reported this spring, on the composite materials. And then they had some problems with the load carrying beams because they were trying to use lamb beams.
They got that squared away.
They finally got an engineer to sign off on what they want to do with that. So yeah, I think I think we're finally getting there. But yeah, hopefully he'll bring that water line down yet this year.
But Kerry Gray has deferred on his, he's not moving forward with
Yeah, we
it.
haven't heard anything
Not
moving
sure
forward
where
on
he's
that
at on it.
in a few months. Then there was another fellow that was interested, and I think, in fact, we've had 2 people recently interested, and I think both of them are kind of waiting to see if we can get the new hangar sites available next summer off of the new taxi lane. It'll be a lot easier to get utilities into those new areas than it is to get them into existing areas because of the links that we've got to go to pick up that sewer line over there.
And we are moving ahead on the sewer line. Hopefully still get that done this year.
Yeah, we met with the city on that
Same time.
Same meeting.
The lift station?
Yeah, the lift
We
station.
already approved.
Yep. So, yeah, they're making a couple final adjustments to that, and hopefully we'll be out to bid with that here in the next few weeks,
Hope so in a couple of weeks.
so we can get that in the ground yet this year.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I haven't seen any construction, and I know they were approved a long, long time ago, and I thought this is kind of the construction season, and haven't seen anything, so.
Yeah, you know that.
They wait for the first snowfall.
Great opportunity for Holman to expand.
Yeah.
Hey, have you seen all the activity over there?
Yeah, the dust is flying over that way too. It's good.
Oh, yep.
I do have one other comment. I may not be here for the work session public comments, so I'll make it now, but up next week is the Berlin airlift, and perhaps Director Faulkner has mentioned it to you or reminded you of it, but that's going to be kind of an important event next week. I think that they're still on track to bring their C-54 cargo plane out, and it should arrive on Tuesday or perhaps Wednesday, I think on Tuesday. It's kind of a big deal for them to bring this out, so I think it's their event, it's their annual convention and so forth, but they're opening it up to the public as well. So.
Yeah, you may have noticed we hung a couple signs out there on the entry road. They asked that a street in town be named Berlin Airlift Boulevard for the event, and the mayor asked if we would do it, so we hung them last week. So there's
Because it's our road?
Oh yeah, because it was easier than filling out the paperwork to do it in the city, I think. So we've got a sign down by the Buffalo on the way in, and on the way out by the petting zoo, the airplanes out there. We have a sign too. So on the way out, just check it out. It's kind of cool. That, we'll have Berlin Airlift on the reader board also. Vivian's going to program that for us, welcoming the vets from Berlin Airlift here. So yeah, that'll be it's going to be on display the 9th, 10th and 11th?
I'm not exactly sure of their schedule, but I believe that it will be available Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Wednesday.
Saturday. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think for sure, and it'll be at Holman, so we can go out and check it out.
Thanks, Dwight.
Yeah, and while you're over looking at that, you can see the investment we're making in the airport, since you didn't know about that.
I've been there recently, what investment are you making?
We're rebuilding our front ramp.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did see that.
Yeah, so trying to put some
Pads.
concrete in there,
Sure.
and that's just a painfully slow process.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments? All right, there's no further business coming before the board. I declare the meeting adjourned, and seeing as how we have twice as many items on the consent agenda. We do the regular board meeting by that clock, 25 after, please. Thank you.
They're quick ones, though.
They are quick ones?
I hope.
Good.
A couple of them may not be so quick.
Yeah. Be careful.
I suppose if it doesn't involve potential Chinese interference, then it'll be quick. I just like to recall that the atomic bomb secrets were smuggled out of here by Russians.
That's right. That's a good point. They think this is a weak point. Who knows what this